One of the ongoing challenges for small businesses is marketing. It's an ongoing task that many simply just don't like. Instead, they'd rather be mixing with their guests or working on their land or improving their services. In fact, they'll find any excuse possible to get out of doing their marketing. But as the industry gets more sophisticated, it's more important than ever to focus on guest attraction. So what if I told you there was something that can help you now? It removes the burden and helps you get the job done, freeing you up to do whatever really lights you up. Well, there is a new kid on the block, and so I've designed this episode to invite you into the brave new world of marketing and guest attraction done for you. Welcome to episode 65. Glamping and unique holiday rentals are surging in popularity with the growing desire of customers to book holidays that deliver an experience. They are also the new business of choice for those wanting to improve their work-life balance. So how do you build a strong business like this that gives you the life you need and a great investment? I'm Sarah Riley, and I want to share what I've discovered after being immersed in this industry for over 20 years to inspire you to find out more about what's going on. Welcome, this is the business of glamping and unique holiday rentals. Hello, and thank you for joining me. So today I'm going to be talking all about marketing done for you, and all of that being made easy by lots of tools that are available for you and anyone else to use, and most of them are free. Oh my goodness, how amazing is that? But before I get on to that, I wanted to talk about a program that I'm running, and I run it every year. Every time we come to the end of a year and the start of a new one, it's a great time to look at what's happened over the last year. So to do a bit of a review and then make some plans about what we're going to do the following year. In my own experience, I have found that this is incredibly helpful for getting rid of old things that aren't serving me and taking on new things which are amazing for my business and in my own personal life. So I call this Transform, and of course, because we're going into 2024, this is called Transform 24, and it's like a little bit of a workshop. There's a workbook that goes with it. It's a time when people can basically sit in a room and go through some prompts to really start thinking about maybe some old outdated habits that they've got, some toxic mindsets, and other things that are holding them back. So it could be something like someone feels they aren't doing as well as they wish. This is giving them a bit of anxiety. So a lot of people that I work with, they have anxiety around social media. So it might just be that they're doing social media, but they're not really having an impact. Maybe they're not getting many followers, and it's making them feel quite anxious. And it becomes something that affects them on a regular basis through their day. And if it's something that they allow to really kind of eat into their confidence, then it can pop up in other areas. So it might be that they'll start doubting that they're any good at talking with customers when they arrive, or maybe they start holding themselves back from sending that email to their customers or to people who are on their email list to invite them to take part in a special offer that they've got going, or they want to just keep in contact with them and share some news about what's been going on at their site. All of these things can sometimes lead from one key reason, and it's about taking a bit of time to actually go over that, to maybe think about that, where the source for that anxiety is. Maybe it's something that is leading to some toxic thinking, and how can that be dealt with? So I always think that bringing in a new year is a great time to really go over these things and start cutting out of your life the stuff that isn't serving you properly and that is maybe bringing some negatives. So this is what I'm doing. And if you want to take part in this, this is open to anyone who wants to join in. It's happening on the 4th of January at 4 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. So whatever that is in your time zone, we'd love to have you join us. So you can do that by following this link. So get ready to write it down. It's inspiredcourses.com/T24, as in transform 24. So that's inspiredcourses.com/T24. It's completely free. Everyone is welcome to come. It's all taking place in the Inspired Courses members area. So you'll have to sign up to get an account. But once you have the account, you can come in, you can say hi, introduce yourself, and you can also have all of the recordings and anything else shared there, including the workbook. So this is all happening if you follow inspiredcourses.com/T24. So recently I've been guiding my club members through the quagmire of how you can use artificial intelligence to free up your time and your brain space for more enjoyable jobs. The potential of AI, especially for small businesses, is just simply incredible. But it's not always going to be a smooth ride, especially if you don't know what you're doing. In fact, it can actually harm your business. So recently Google changed their algorithm, they updated it, and now it's actually penalizing those websites that are only using AI generated content. So this shows that the movers and shakers of the world are hot on the tail of AI and making sure it won't mess up the experience of users on the internet and how they find information, whether that information is correct, and so on. So the more sophisticated AI gets, the more sophisticated this kind of thing will get when Google and other organizations like it will start marking down and penalizing more websites and more businesses for using it. But there's much more to AI than just creating content. And I recently wrote a book all about this. It's part of my Hospitality Hacks series for my club members, which I've designed to help them get stuff done quicker. So it's how they can hack the system, but in a safe way. And in my book, I showed how AI tools can help you manage stock, cleaners, website content, guest communication, accounts, and I listed 120 mind-blowing AI tools to use in the right way to make the job easier without getting it wrong. And that's why in this episode I decided to invite Ben Kilner onto the show. Now, Ben has an AI tech consultancy which helps small businesses incorporate AI into their workflow so they can reduce costs and increase efficiency. So there's much to be gained from understanding how all of this works. And if you are a little bit concerned or worried, or you don't understand how it might work for you or how you can make the best of it without inviting any of the negatives in, then get in touch either through the podcast, through my site, Inspired Courses, and Ben will also share his contact details at the end. So let's head on over to the conversation now. Ben, it's incredible that you're here, and I really am very grateful for your time because this is a topic that so many of us are struggling with, and I suppose also feeling kind of the tingling sensation of, oh my goodness, where is this going? This is actually a little bit scary, especially for those who maybe have their head in the sand and that they're not wanting to face up to the fact this is where it's going. And then there's those that maybe are saying, well, hang on a minute, I can actually use this to really help me in my business and my everyday. So let's have a kind of a broad talk. But first, before we go along into the detail of AI, let's talk about you. How did you get into AI? And I know that you are a previous glamping business owner, so you have fantastic knowledge of the industry, but also now you're really involved in AI. Tell me, how did that happen?
So, well, first of all, it's an absolute pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me. So, years and years ago, I started the customer success and delivery team for an AI tech startup. And their goal was to allow councils within the UK to track vehicles along their streets anonymously, so without any GDPR issues. And the way they worked, they put edge computers, so very small AI models, on lampposts to track vehicles within the field of view of these cameras. And so I led that team for, I think, about 3.5 years or so, and then moved into the glamping space, as you well know. That's when I met you. And then I have now sold that business, and it has been a sort of, after taking a sabbatical last year and this recent boom in consumer AI, I was beginning to get a bunch of questions from both friends, old colleagues, and just general contacts about how they could use it in their business. And so that led me to found the AIinbusiness.co. And it has been a very, very strange journey indeed. Very strange. Because as you say, there is this monumental shift of sort of delegation of human intellect from humans to computers, which is unprecedented and is going to be incredibly disruptive. So to all of your listeners who are, got their head in the sand, I do not blame you at all. But I think, as we'll go into in this podcast, there are ways that you can use it in your business to really help your business in a sort of easily accessible and non-threatening way.
So I think we were just saying before I pressed record, we were just saying about how the AI is learning so quickly from just people using it. It's learning and it's developing. So something that it may have done last week, it's maybe didn't do it quite so well, or maybe it did it slightly differently. This week it's doing it on another level, on another scale, because it's had lots of users that have been using it, interacting with it, and it's learning from that process. And so tell listeners kind of AI, can you sum it up in a broad view, if you can? Challenge for you, Ben. Can you sum it up in an umbrella view way?
So the term AI was coined to describe computers that begin to exhibit human capabilities. That could be sight, it could be audio recognition, it could be voice creation or creative writing. And so it's a very broad umbrella term, which is bandied about, sometimes correctly, sometimes incorrectly. But overall, it is a computer that does human things. And the way it learns is very similar to the way a human would learn. So it's being, say, for example, you wanted to teach your child how to recognize a cat. You would show it, so let's say, tens of images of cats in a little picture book. And each time you saw it, you'd say cat. And eventually your child would say cat. And you were like, yes, my child is really smart. And it's a very similar thing for AI models. You take probably hundreds, maybe thousands, maybe even millions of cat images. You draw a box around and say, this is cat, everything else is not cat. And you put that into a neural network, which then begins to recognize what a cat is from these groups of pixels. And based on that, AI models are now better than humans more often than not at recognizing images for large data sets. And the more information you put in and the more you correct its mistakes, the better it gets over time, exactly as you would with a sort of human child learning in school.
So in terms of this industry and in terms of a business owner in this industry, what do you think they should be knowing and what do you think they should be doing about this huge, monumental shift in things to do with artificial intelligence? What do you think people should be paying attention to, whether they want to or not?
So for the hospitality and glamping space, I think it won't be as disruptive as it will be in other industries. So actually, the threat to your jobs, to your livelihood, is minimized comparatively to, let's say, an accountant out there who or a banker. So bear that in mind. Have that confidence that it's not going to come after your job immediately. AI combined with robots might eventually, but we'll leave that for another time. The thing to really focus on is how to easily access AI to use in your business, and in a non-threatening way. You don't have to use the biggest, best, smartest models out there, and you also don't need to become overwhelmed by the sheer quantity of them. Just focus on a very, very small number of protocols. The ones I'll be recommending primarily is ChatGPT, which many of you will be familiar with if you're familiar with the AI space, and just get started. You learn how to prompt engineer. It sounds complicated, it isn't. It's literally like having a conversation with a computer, and there's good ways to do it and bad ways to do it. And so building up that knowledge in a really simplified way is the best way you could possibly get started. And you realize it's exceptionally powerful, especially for small business owners who are often solopreneurs or would have a very small team. And they have the advantage over large corporations who can't introduce AI because, frankly, they would need to jump through so many security hoops in order to sign it off, that they are left in the dust. And the likes of Samsung and even Google are telling their employees not to use AI because, as we mentioned earlier, it learns from the actions they put in, and therefore they can lose crucial bits of IP. Whereas as a small business where we don't really have much crucial IP to be lost, we can begin to use it in our businesses very quickly and very easily. And my general rule of thumb is you can get AI to do language-based tasks, roughly about 80% of the task it can do for you. But you will always need to do that 20% of checking and also the input at the beginning, which is crucial also.
So I've been talking to my Startup and Grow Club, people who are trying to do what they can to improve their business and the methods of working. And also, as you said, many are saying, I kind of know what to do, but I don't have the time to do it because I'm so engaged with the guest and everything else I have. How do I get things done? And AI, and what you were saying there with Chat GPT, is one of those things that you can use. But let's talk about how that works. For someone who doesn't know, they maybe heard all the elements and yet they still haven't quite, understood what it is and how it might work. So my understanding is that it learns by consuming lots of information, and then you can give it commands and it will spit out, say, lumps of text, and it could be a Facebook ad, it could be a paragraph for a blog that you're writing, it could be a sales page you're putting together, it could just be a conversational piece in an email that you're wanting to send out, but you don't have the time to construct it, you don't have the brain space, but you can get Chat GPT to do it for you. So give people an idea of how that works and how good it is, because a lot of people will say, oh, it's not that good, there's no way that someone or a piece of code, a program will be able to write what I'm thinking. I know, because I've been using it, I know how good it is, but you tell me your perspective of how good it is.
So the way they're built really is you put in millions of lines of high quality text. That could be novels, it could be very well written articles, etc. And over time, the AI model, the large language model, which ChatGPT is, will learn basically what word should come after the previous word. So essentially, it's a word guesser. And it gets better and better at guessing the next word in a sentence until it has completed your sentence structure or your paragraph or your article, whichever. And previous models, so let's talk about the different AI models within ChatGPT. You've got 3.5, which is free. You can log into ChatGPT and use it. It's relatively quick. It is quite accurate. It lacks some sort of logical capabilities relative to ChatGPT 4, which is paid for. It's roughly $20 a month, but the additional power you get with that is huge. It's got exceptional logical capabilities. It is much more concise, so less rambling, and it's just really, really powerful. So bearing in mind the fact that you have a model which is guessing the next word, and you want it to give you a very specific answer, you need to ask it a very specific question and give it the information it needs in order to give you the answer. So if you were to like copy and paste in a paragraph and just say, improve this, it will have a stab at it, but it's way too broad. You need to give it a bit more context and say, I'm going to give you a paragraph which I think the syntax needs to be improved, or I want to make it shorter, or I want to make it longer. And I want you to write it in the style of. That could be an expert marketer. It could be a sort of glamping host, a sort of enthusiastic glamping host. So you give it that sort of context about what you wanted it to do. You give it a very specific question, and then you press enter, and off it goes. And often people will they'll sometimes be disappointed by the answer they get, and they will lose interest in the whole thing. And you've got to remember that it's a sort of iterative thing. You're learning as well as it is learning from you as well. So the more time and more iterations you give it, the better it will get, and the better you will get at getting the commands out that you want. And the other thing to note within ChatGPT is that you have, let's call them chats, because that's what it's built around. You have these separate chats. Each time you start a new topic, you need to start a new chat. You can keep a chat going for ages. So, for example, you could have a social media agent chat. So agent social media, let's call the chat. And it grows over time. It knows exactly the format that you like your social media captions to be written in. And so each time you need a new one, you go back into that old chat. If you wanted a new topic, you'd start a new chat and build up that knowledge base from there.
So I've heard a lot of people talking about, well, artificial intelligence is just that, it's artificial, and my business is authentic and my business is very different. I couldn't use that artificial tool because it's not going to be with my personality, it's not going to have my voice, it's not going to connect with my guests and my audience like I want it to. You're saying there that actually the more you use it, the more it will learn, and the more it will speak in your language, the more it will become authentic like you. Is that the interpretation? Have I got that right?
Spot on. So the more examples you give it of your writing initially, the better it will be from the off. And the more corrections you give it as you go along, the better it will be eventually. So decent input plus corrections as you go along will really steer it towards a very accurate representation of how you like to write, or your particular tone and style.
So what do you personally recommend for someone in this space, in the hospitality industry, that, you know, that usually smaller businesses, usually solopreneurs or people with a very small team? What are the various tools or the various tasks that AI could do on their behalf? What would you recommend?
So I would start by assuming that each leader of the company become familiar with AI before passing it on to the rest of their team. The reason I suggest this is because, having dealt with a bunch of clients who have tried to delegate it immediately to a member of staff, they've remained a bit confused about how it all works. I'd highly recommend getting started with understanding the ropes yourself, even if it's just on a fundamental level. And the starting point, especially from a director of a company, should be to use it as a sort of director co-pilot. Imagine having a very intelligent intern come into your company, but they know nothing about your company. They're exceptionally intelligent. They know lots about general things, but nothing about your specific company. So you start off by giving it the information, or giving this sort of artificial intern the information it needs about your company. And then you begin to ask for its support. So it could be writing standard operating procedures. It could be writing a sort of cleaning checklist for the bathrooms. It knows how to do this. It's probably got thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of examples that it's trained on before, and therefore it can guess what it is that you will want from your standard operating procedure. So the starting point would be create a sort of director co-pilot, rely on it as that ultra intelligent intern who needs sort of forming like clay around your business, but ultimately does need that information about your business in order to be able to give you the best possible answer.
I mean, it's a fantastic way of summing it up, because so many times people say to me, oh, I haven't got my SOPs in place. And I say to them, well, what happens then if you fall ill and you are the director of your business and there's no one else who can take over from you if you fall ill? And, you know, we've seen that during the pandemic, haven't we? When people have suddenly got long COVID, or, suddenly just have been taken out of their business for various reasons. And that just means that there's no SOPs there to guide everyone else on the daily operations and the daily things they need to do. But so many people say, I haven't got time to put that together. I haven't got time to study, what I need to put in that checklist or that list. So this gives people a foundation to build upon, to save them a lot of time, to, rather than starting from a blank piece of paper, as it were, old school way, you're actually starting from a full piece of paper. You're just going through and you're crossing things out, saying that doesn't apply to me, and you're adding things because it's prompted you to think about things differently for your business. Would you say that's how it works?
Definitely. The ideas and suggestions that will come up won't be groundbreaking. They will simply be run-of-the-mill ideas that would have taken you quite a long time to remember or think of yourself. You would have had to use Google to probably search up some examples which may not be applicable to your business, whereas this will move us from the age of searching sort of questions to the age of answers, which I think is where we're headed. People will be less likely to be searching for questions in the future, more just simply they want the answer then and there, and that is what this begins to provide.
So in terms of what a small business owner might be doing on a day-to-day basis, can you give some examples of some of the things that AI can really help them with? So we've talked about writing, we've talked about blogs and SOPs and all of that kind of thing. I've also heard about things like pricing. So looking at the market in general, seeing what price is being charged by everyone local to a business, and saying demand is high at the moment, therefore you can charge your prices, and it automatically puts the price up. So an example of that is Price Labs, I believe. And are there any other things that you can come up with or remember or think about would go well in the daily tasks for a small business owner?
One potentially very powerful sort of gatekeeper for the business are chatbots. They have a bad rep. I mean, we've all been on the phone to large utility companies and been sort of, we've been chatted at by a computer rather than chatted with. They are getting a lot better. So having an online chatbot which answers really simple questions about your business just allows people to move from that searching for answers to literally just having the answer at their fingertips by putting it into that chat box. It could be, how do I get there? What are the best pubs nearby? And then that chatbot capability can extend to within the operations within your company. So rather than having a customer having a big old wodge of documents about the local area and checking procedures, etc., that can all be held potentially within a WhatsApp chatbot, which has been trained about everything to do with your business and can answer everything for you. So those are two sort of customer-facing examples. Another customer-facing example could be email auto reply, where it will create a first draft reply to an email. That's an interesting one. Again, always worth checking it because there will occasionally be mistakes. From a sort of daily operation otherwise, really it's down to creating those standard operating procedures which we have discussed before. And once they're created, they should then free up your time much more. Another idea for especially early stage within a company is creating mock-ups of what you want your units to look like. The historic process was probably be trawled through Instagram and Pinterest, whereas now you can generate incredible graphics from a protocol called Midjourney. It's relatively inaccessible, and I'd say this is great for people who are a little bit more familiar with computers and are just comfortable with the sort of tech space a bit more. But once you have the grasp of that, there is no need to employ a artistic sort of creator to mock up your interiors or even the structures of your treehouse or your safari tent. You can go into Midjourney, put in a prompt in a similar way you would with ChatGPT, give it a few more tweaks and commands at the end, and you can generate images which you own, and you can then use to send off to your architect if you are going to create a building, or your interior designer, and say, this is where I want to start. Let's go from there. So the other thing that can be useful for is logo generation. And I would say that there are two major limitations with this image generation space at the moment. And one is text to text. So if you ask Midjourney to put in text onto a logo, it really struggles with that. Don't know why, just hasn't mastered it yet. And the other one is limbs and fingers. So if you have people in the image, occasionally it'll throw in sort of a seventh finger, or a fourth limb, just by surprise. And so that's just something to be aware of. But those are other particularly useful use cases of AI at the moment. But as things progress, more and more powerful applications will pop up.
I saw recently some images generated, I believe, by Midjourney, which are of the new king during his coronation. And it was really funny because, well, incredible images, incredible. You would not know that it wasn't him. But for his crown, because his crown, the AI just couldn't get the crown. So the crown is like this huge thing on his head. But the king was just like laughing and dancing, as you would imagine someone who's just been crowned king of a country. And it was just hilarious. But this, the crown with as probably a bit like fingers, it wasn't quite coping with the top of the crown. But I suppose also a thing that comes to mind is for those startup businesses, when often a thing that I'm told is that I can't do my website yet. I can't put any images on it because I'm still building my structures, and I haven't got any images that will show the structures. I haven't got any images that show my typical guest. I can't, find anything on the image libraries that will suit it. And I suppose something like this could actually create something from scratch around your vision, and will put that into an image that you can then use on your new website to promote your business even before you built it, and start attracting guests and bookings and everything else, and a following and an audience. But it's just incredible how this is developing daily. And do you think that would be a good idea, something to use in that respect? I mean, should people be worried about who is actually in the image? Is there a GDPR thing here? Is there an image protection? Is there, people, are they going to turn around and say, why have you put me in your image on your glamping site? How does it work? Is it all basically made up? Or is it based on images of people on the web? How does it work?
So as with a sort of text generation, it's a sort of pixel guesser. When you generate an image in Midjourney, you will see it starts out as this old sort of ghostly, impressionistic type image, and it will fill out over time as these pixels become more and more certain. And the images of humans that you mentioned, they are based off hundreds of thousands, millions of images of other humans out there. And as such, they are deemed to be your private. If you pay for Midjourney and you create an image in Midjourney, it is deemed that you own that image. You have the rights to use that anywhere commercially or privately. If you generate it on a sort of non-paid for version, you can use it, but everyone else also has the right to use it. So that's something to be aware of. The risk of using it to create images for your business which hasn't yet started is that obviously the sort of false representation thing, that is definitely something to be aware of. But some of the images that you will get on there will be so customized to exactly what you want. They'll be so much better than the images you'll get anywhere else. So really, it is a very good place to start. If you wanted like a cozy log burning stove, or a bowl of marshmallows, a close up on a nice wooden table. I mean, that could have been got from any stock library anywhere, but it's exactly the one you want. So I would definitely recommend it for that. The other thing that you can use are things like Canva. So Canva, I suspect you use a lot of, and it's something I absolutely love. They've got some magic edit tools and a magic sort of fill tool in there as well, which allows you to select an object and then change it for any other object. So in theory, you could take a photograph of your future glamping spot and ask it to put a tent in of the location where there was grass. A much more powerful version of that is Photoshop. They've got this generative fill and is mind-bogglingly powerful. It's a sort of cross between Mid-Journey and Photoshop, and it's just incredibly powerful. I'm aware that not everyone will be using Photoshop, but if you are employing someone who does use Photoshop, then you can just ask them to just drop your safari tent into your meadow at literally the click of a button. It will be done. So for creating mock-ups of what your future site will look like, definitely. You mentioned also websites in that. I'm just going to come back to that. So I know from personal experience that can be one of the larger costs when setting up these businesses. If you head over to a website called 10Web, 10Web is a very powerful AI website generator, and it will generate text and images for your business based off a relatively short input prompt. And yes, the images will be dodgy. You will need to switch them out, but it gives you the structure for your website, which you probably would have had to have paid hundreds, if not thousands of pounds for elsewhere. And once that's so that's one way of doing it. Then the other way of doing it is duplicating someone else's website. This is not something I recommend, but it is something that is available with 10Web. You drop in a URL and it will duplicate any website in any format into WordPress, and you can then edit it from there. So it's available and to be used with caution for obvious reasons, but it can be a massive time and cost saver.
This is just an incredible time, isn't it? And it's also quite a scary time too, because if you think that if you have spent a long time building your website, building your business, creating the uniqueness that you have created over time, and someone can come along and take your website link and essentially mock up their own business based on yours, and then step into your space and say, now I'm the expert, now I'm the person you need to come to, now I'm the business you need to book your holiday with. And they've done a fraction of the work that those people who have gone before them have done. And I know that this is going to really create fear in a lot of people. I know in some industries, for example, in the photography space, that's creating a lot of fear amongst photographers who would normally have been paid to go to a business to set something up, to do a photo shoot and spend a whole day getting these images right. And now you can actually go to a Mid-Journey and just put in a few well thought through prompts, and you can get those images without having to go to the huge expense of getting models, photographers and everything else to represent your business. So I know that this is, as you've said before, hugely disruptive. It's a massive force for both good and bad, and we're going to see major changes over the coming years. And I know as a business owner myself, that's made me want to learn more about this. I'm incredibly curious. I want to understand how and where this is going, especially when you start linking it to the whole ethos behind Web3, which is that you are going to potentially own these things that you're creating on the web, and blockchain technology and all of that kind of stuff, which I know from experience when I've spoken to the people I'm supporting about it, they've firmly shoved their fingers in their ears and said, no, I don't want to listen to this anymore. No, it's too much. But how would you, or what would you say to someone who is feeling fear about this and where it's going? Because I think fear is a good way of describing it. Some people are feeling quite fearful about this. I'm my two daughters, what's happening to their future with all of this, and where is it going? How would you sum up how people should be feeling about this major shift?
It's a that's a tricky question. That is so the reactions that I've seen, you've got the full head in the sand, you've got euphoric enthusiasm, and you've got sort of every shade in between. And for business owners, especially, I think there really is, it's imperative that people at least have a go at this and become familiar with the space to a degree where you can begin to use it, or at least instruct someone in your team on how to use it. So if you don't, let's start with that. If you don't, you run the risk of smaller teams being more agile, being able to do the same thing at a lower cost. And if you do it, you will potentially, in the worst case, be able to keep up with them. And in the best case, you may be able to exceed them and be able to do it faster and cheaper. That's what it boils down to. As for the bigger philosophical question around where we're headed, it's an absolute minefield. I personally have been struggling with this, just as a simply, when we do delegate so much of our intellect to computers, what role will humans play on the planet? Will there be some universal basic income which we're all paid, and beyond that, everyone's just sort of waffling around painting? I mean, that is one potential future. Personally, I suspect what will happen is over the next couple of decades, we will have AI powered humans where they are ultra productive, ultra effective, and they can use AI to the best of their ability. And really, they will just be so far ahead of their pure human compatriots that those people just won't really stand a chance in the marketplace. I do think that it is pretty much inevitable that we are going to head into an AI future. There's talk of sort of putting it on pause for a few years so that people can put really good controls in place to make sure these AI models don't go AWOL and go nuts. But really, it's like a game of whack-a-mole. If you suppress it in, let's say, the US, which is currently the sort of world leader in AI, then all that will happen is another country will think, oh, well, great, I can now become the world leader. And let's say, for example, that could be China, who is probably the second most powerful AI country in the world. And then if they suppress it, then it'll just pop up in Africa. You know, it's a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy, really. As for how people adapt to that unknown future, it's a really hard one to say. Just my personal philosophy is, if you can take advantage of it, do. But if you can't, then really focus on ways to differentiate yourself in the market. That could be an extra human contact with your clients. So that could be making sure you're there for every single meet and greet while you've got AI trundling around the background. And my personal approach to this, obviously, I'm focusing on this AI business now, but ultimately an AI will take over my job. There will be AI advisors out there who will do probably a better job than me. And so my backlash to that is my sort of creative work. I've founded a YouTube channel and a social media following based off a rather odd contraption I created last year. And that's my push away from that, because frankly, an AI model will really struggle to create that human experience in the future. So human to human expertise, like sales, like meet and greet, like hospitality, AI will really struggle to compete with that in the sort of next couple of decades. So that's what I would focus on, whilst making sure that you're using AI where you can in your business.
So, I mean, in a way, that was a really hard question. I'm really sorry for throwing that in your direction, because it's something we're all struggling with and you dealt with it incredibly well. But I think that in a way, what you're saying is look at how it can help you, and yet still remember that your guest, your customer, is still going to want to have that personal interaction with a human and is going to really value that. And then also when you're using the AI, let's say for an image or let's say for text, generating text, don't just use it as it's given to you through the AI. Definitely add your own personality, your own uniqueness to it. And that's really where we all stand out, isn't it? As humans, we are all very, very different. We are all very separate. We have our own personality, we have our own vibe, and that we need to add that into everything that we generate through AI to make sure that it still has that, because we're all very different and unique. No one can replace us. That's our brand, our own individual brand. But I definitely think that we're going to see so much more of a bit of a takeover of people who are willing to embrace AI and what it can give us individually and into our businesses. So I think we're definitely going to see a bit of a takeover there. So it's going to be quite a frustrating time, I think, for some who may not want to get involved in all of this. So what's the next steps, do you think, for the industry as a whole in hospitality? What would you say the next steps are? Is it to just kind of wait and see, or is it to really go out and search for those tools that can help us implement things quicker, more swiftly?
I think the first steps, if not already done by your audience, would be just to get a sort of a basic grasp of ChatGPT, and specifically ChatGPT 4. And beyond that, I would then get better at using ChatGPT 4. That's really, really it. The other tools out there, they're quite niche. And the analogy I like to use, it's like our sort of very first computers, where you had a screen, you had a keyboard. I don't think we had a mouse on the first computers. And the computers didn't really speak very well to each other. They had ADSL connections at best. And so that's very much like our AI models today. They're disparate. They don't chat to each other very well. And you have to command them with a command line pretty much, as you used to the old computers. So I would say focus on the very few that really bring you the most advantage to your business. The next step I think we will see is the large players out there like Google, like Microsoft, really begin to incorporate it into their standard offerings, like the G Suite or Google Workspace, which it now is called, where you will have an AI co-pilot in your word processor, in your Excel spreadsheet, and they will just all be there automatically and people will use them. So for the people who really don't want to jump ahead of the curve, then just hold out until those tools come along. They will turn up and they'll be in your face. They'll be in your face. You won't be able to avoid them. And then beyond that, I think just keep an eye out for the really big step changes. And here I'm thinking of robots. So being able to use a robot to do the cleaning within your units. Personally, if I had one, I would, obviously the cost saving there could be gigantic. Even if you had to shell out a load of cash up front, if it's going to last you 10 years, then the cost per year will be minimal compared to a human. So that's the next big step change. And then beyond that, really buckle up for artificial general intelligence. When that comes along, we've hit that, what's called the sort of, in the AI space, is the singularity, but the equivalent is the event horizon of a black hole, beyond which can't escape that event horizon of a black hole. We don't know what happens beyond that. And so at that singularity point for AI, we just don't know what's going to happen. Originally, people thought it was 15 or so years away, and now people are suggesting maybe we're a couple of years away from that. So buckle up for that. That would be a really interesting step change and potential sort of disturbances around that. That would be my advice for now, near term and longer term.
So in terms of mindset and people understanding that they can make the best of this or they can make the worst of it, what would you say to somebody who needs to get their head wrapped around this, and what mindset do they need to have?
I'd go back to the analogy of the AI intern. That really just reimagine this very clunky interface that you have to interact with a keyboard as the interface to an ultra intelligent intern. If you begin to treat it more like a human, obviously that's a little bit controversial in certain spaces, but if you begin to treat it more like a human, you will naturally begin to try and find ways to get the answers that you need from it, rather than just thinking it's a black box, I don't know how it works. It's got human-like logical capability. It's got human-like knowledge. Interact with it like a human, and it will interact with you in the way that you want it to. So that AI intern mindset is crucial. And the other one, which is important, is remembering that AI models are an amalgamation of all sorts of different knowledge bases. So that could be science, it could be philosophy, it's pretty much everything out there. When you want to get an answer from AI, you need to give it a much more narrowed down starting point. So imagine a big old heap of spaghetti, ram a fork in there, give it a twist, and take out just the strands of knowledge that you need in order to get your answer. If you go too broad, you'll get a very broad answer. So you need to be really quite narrow in the way you approach your initial prompt. So be very specific in what you need. So AI intern, and then that sort of spaghetti knowledge analogy. And I think open-mindedness, but with caution. Open-mindedness because humans, we don't really know where this is going. We just need to be aware of where it's going. And then cautious, especially from a GDPR point of view. So we've mentioned the fact that these AI models learn from the users themselves. So if I put in a bunch of commands, it will be learning from my commands over time. The exact information I put into that command probably will just be blurred up and blended with loads of other stuff. But there is a chance that someone's name, someone's address that I put into there could pop up in someone else's answer in 2 years' time, once that model has been retrained on that data. So be very cautious about the personal data that you put into these models. Keep it very bland, broad, and keep the information to that sort of information which people could normally find online in any case. So that's where I put the caution factor on the data you put in. So yeah, mindset, I think that probably covers it.
I've heard stories already that images have been used by AI and they've got the copyright watermark in there, and it's been jiggled about, and yet the copyright is still there, and they're now being taken to court because AI used something that was copywritten. So that's the test case, really, isn't it, to see where this is going. And as you said, GDPR has a huge impact on every business around the world, and the equivalent legislation in the other countries as well. And we have to be very mindful, for sure, on the information that we're sharing within all of that. But I like your idea about the future could mean that we all get a general wage and we're freed up to do things that we love and we're passionate about, such as supporting charities and those who are less fortunate than us. I mean, that's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, isn't it? It says that once we've had our basic needs met, such as food, water, and wage, and everything else, our minds and our bodies are freed up to be able to think outside of the box in helping other people and making humanity better. So I choose to believe that that will happen. I'm not going to think about the fear of what could happen instead, but I do believe that we can all help formulate something that goes in the right direction. We won't do that if we stick our heads in the sand and pretend it's not happening, because it's happening, and we're never going to get away from this. We're never going to change what's happening, and we have to almost, get on the wave and ride it, because if we don't get on the wave and ride it, we're just going to be floundering around in the water and potentially drowning. So that's what I believe in. And a year and a half ago, I went to a hotel and there was a robot wandering around the foyer. So this is happening. It's everywhere. And that was actually based on kind of the pre-massive AI days. And how far we have moved and changed in such a short period of time. I have no idea what's going to happen around the corner in the next couple of years, but it's quite mind-boggling to think about it. And then especially if you put it together with blockchain technology and the whole idea that everything has code and it's all very independent and unique, and that means people own things, very significantly own things, including currency, which people will start paying businesses in hospitality with their own currency, which isn't the usual currency that we see. And this is all connected, isn't it? All these developments are connected and are growing and getting bigger. So what's next for Ben?
So next is helping small companies, and specifically small companies rather than large companies, to incorporate AI into their businesses. So it's simply where people are struggling to work out how best to do it, where they've got concerns around security and GDPR, where they've got a particular challenge with getting ChatGPT to create the answer they want. That's where I step in and help them out. And I have been building up sort of longer term strategies for certain companies, especially those who are going to be very, very disrupted in the future, like social media agencies, where it is literally do or die for them. It's not like hospitality where there's lots of human interaction still, but in those social media agencies, it's a do or die situation. So for them, working with much sort of longer term strategies. But for the most part, it will be sort of shorter term, getting people up to speed and making sure they're taking advantage of what's out there.
Mm-hmm. And on a personal level, you've done so much amazing charity work. You're such an adventurer, and I believe you went up the Thames in a boat. Is that right? Tell me a bit about that.
So that was the most bizarre thing. So last year I took a sabbatical and I decided to try and raise money for two mental health charities, the Lucy Rayner Foundation and Strong Men. And I thought, I'd love to do an uber long bike ride, like Land's End to John O'Groats, or a source to sea canoe journey. And instead of either of those, I combined the two and I invented this new type of propulsion system for a boat, which you take two scrap bikes, you strap them onto your canoe, and you pedal the front one and it paddles the back one a bit like a duck. And it has been a sort of social media sensation. So it's had just past 100 million views recently, and I've now got over 125,000 followers and generated thousands of pounds of support for charity. And yeah, just the most bizarre thing. And that journey was from the source of the Thames, and I was intending to get to the sea, but I got kicked out in Putney by the Port of London Authority, who said my boat wasn't seaworthy, and they had a point. I cobbled it together in 3 days from two scrap bikes and 2 sheets of marine ply, and it was fantastic. So that's simmering away in the background and is my personal pushback against the sort of AI space, as I mentioned earlier, because it'll be very hard for AI models to sort of replicate that human journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also had you went to the Ukraine to help support during the early days of the war, and so you really are truly an adventurer who puts your money where your mouth is, and you actually do it. And in amongst also, building a glamping business and doing things very differently, providing an off-grid style that no one else at the time had done. And you've now moved on from that, sold your business and moved on to pastures new. But I think that's really what I hope people get from this, is that whole vision to think differently, to think outside of the box, to look at what the opportunities are coming towards them because of this space and what's happening in it, not just thinking about the fear of it and the overwhelm, but the whole, okay, how can I use this to help me? And that's really what you give example of regularly, how you think outside of the box and you embrace things and you do things differently. So if somebody wants to find out more about you and what you're up to, and also follow your journey up the Thames, how would they find out more? Where would they go?
So for all things weird and wonderful contraptions, head to benkilner.com, and there are various links there to YouTube and social media. And then for anything AI related, head over to aiinbusiness.co. And There is a contact form there, also some social media bits, but the best thing is just to get in touch via the contact form online.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Ben, for your expertise today. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure my listeners will too.
An absolute pleasure. Thank you, Sarah.